Okay, everybody, hello and welcome to the FarmQA webinar series. And you should be seeing my screen with a few slides. Today we will be covering our quarterly update. And so this is everything that's new in FarmQA over the last quarter. And so if you have not been tuning into these webinar series, I also did one on January 11th talking about everything that we had done from basically Q4 of 2021. So there are some new features in there that may be new to you going into FarmQA for a new season. So there may be two webinars to tune into. However, this webinar will cover, like I said, the new functions in Q1 of 2022. And I'm excited to present to you guys as we really have added in quite a bit of new functionality to the product in that time range. And I want to make sure that you are up to speed on our functionality going into the 2022 season. So with that said, we're going to walk through a few of the items shown on the screen here. We added recommendation pricing into the product, along with the ability to start from previous reports. We have the capability of driving field boundaries to delineate the shapes and get exact acreage. We added in the concept of a virtual weather station, and there are a few more things I'm hoping to cover as well, depending on time. I would say this one it may go over our 30 minutes, but if you guys have any questions, please put those in the chat at any time. And then this will also be on YouTube if you can't catch the full length of the webinar. So with that said, we'll start out. We did a customer interview to cover our new analytic functionality. And the customer to highlight would be Berry Consult, and they are based out of the Netherlands, but they work specifically in strawberries. And the functionality that they called out or found a lot of value in was our analytics views. And so for them, it was the ability to compare insect assessments over time and graph that out from easily capturing it in the mobile application to seeing it date by fields and infestations. So with that said, that was just a customer highlight we'll try to be doing going forward in our webinars. But with that said, we're going to jump into the live demo component of the webinar and talk through our new functionality. So with that said, you're looking at what we call FarmQA Controller. This is our web-based side of the software. And the first function I will start out by talking about is the addition of pricing to our chemical recommendation feature. And so the way this works is if I click on the Advice tab on the left-hand column, within this view we have 3 tabs, and if I click on Products, this gets us into our product database within your specific FarmQA account. And so this is not a global list, it would be specific to your enterprise, but we can import or you can add products via an EPA import as shown on the screen here. However, this particular topic is going to address the addition of the pricing unit, as you can see down here. So this is your ability to key in or type in a price per a select unit. And so as you can see here, if I were to go to any given product in this list, the pricing is available. Affinity, you can see I've got a price in and it happens to be per pound. But if I go to a different product that doesn't have pricing, you can see how I can simply key in a dollar amount and then select my associated unit to that price. Then from there, the value becomes how we can associate, and we'll do the math on your recommendations to show you roll up totals. So that is where you enter the price. Keep in mind that you would have to update that as the price does change, and we don't currently have the concept of discounting per customer, things like that. So it really is more of a rule of thumb estimate on the cost, as it does come down to a single price that is inputted per chemical. With that said, as we write recommendations, and I'll go through the workflow from the mobile application, but you can also write recommendations from the web view. But the concept here is if I click on a field and I'm going to create my recommendation, now from this view, if I select my chemical mix, and from here I can see the different chemicals and jump between my mixes. But as I select a particular mix, this is where it populates in the mix order and the rates themselves. But what's new on this mobile side is if I do click into a particular product, I can see the call out of the pricing for, in this case, a pound and the units. But I have the opportunity to adjust that from this view. And then as I save that, it will now take in or adjust the price for this particular recommendation. So that is one way you can overcome if there is grower specific pricing, or perhaps the price has changed since you define the price in your database. So essentially think of the price that you're entering on the web view as a default price with the flexibility of editing or adjusting the price when you're in real time writing the recommendation. So from here, we will select done. You can see how we populate a lot of the other values, but in my case, I will submit this so we can then see what the report looks like when it contains the pricing information. So we could turn around and view this on the mobile application, but for the sake of this demo, I'm going to show the price within our web view and then export to PDF. So within the advice tab, and now if I stay within this first main tab, this is where we can see any recommendation that has been written. So this is the recommendation that I just wrote as part of our demonstration. Within here, you can see a few things. One is I've got an average price per acre, which is a sum of the products within the recommendation. And then within here as well, I've got the cost for this entire field, along with a breakdown of the cost or the price per chemical. So my bound is my $13 per gallon. And then as I look over to the total price, this is factoring in the field size to know the total price per chemical, along with that rolled up price of $129 for the entire field. So as we go through here, another example on how you can visualize this is if you click on a multi-field recommendation or a batch recommendation. This is an example where you can see the pricing broken down by field, but then with that being multiple fields, we're going to total the acreage across all 4 of these fields to come up with a roll-up total of $7,600 for this entire batch recommendation. So you can see the breakdown and how those numbers flow into a report and how we are doing the math to come up with totals. On a PDF, the way this would be viewed is, first of all, when you click the PDF generation or the download button, within your options for customizing the PDF, show pricing is an option. So if you do want that to be visible in the PDF, make sure to check that option. If you want to simply write recommendations with pricing, but don't expose that to maybe an end user or a customer, you can turn that off. So you have the option on either the mobile app or the web view to turn that on for visibility. In my case, assuming that we do have that displayed, now if I open up my PDF, we would see a breakdown of the details per field. We've got the chemicals, the rates, but then similar to how I showed it in the web view, we've got the cost per field broken down here. And again, that's going to be based on our acreage. And then as I scroll to the bottom of this report, this is going to be what I would call our shopping cart. So this is across all of the fields, in this case, 4 different corn fields. You can see the cost, but just in this case, it's the PDF view of that same data. So that's what our pricing looks like. And again, this is an optional feature. If you want to add in pricing on your products, it would then flow to the PDF, and we would give you the opportunity to choose if you want to expose it in the PDF or not. So another thing to point out while we're talking about recommendations is that we did add an additional PDF option. And this would be if you want to really condense what that PDF looks like. And so what I'll be doing here is I'm grabbing 3 different batch recommendations. So within each one of these recommendations, you can see I've got a series of 4 or 5 fields, all within a series of corn recommendations or soybeans. But now if I export that to PDF, we've got a new option where, first of all, you can hide those per field totals, but then you can also have different header options. And so, oh, sorry, I meant the full header style. So if you come in here, and the full detail would show you a breakdown of the acreage and the water volume per field. But if I just do field names and I export this to PDF, this is a way where you can really condense or collapse a report or PDF to have very condensed. I want to suppress page breaks as well. So this will be taking a report of saying we have 3 different batch recommendations, but now what I'm doing, instead of showing the details, we're just showing a comma separated list for those fields. So we're saying these 4 fields need this chemical combination at this rate. These 4 fields need the chemical combination at this rate. So again, it's a more condensed version that we've had before. that's available along with all the other PDF options for recommendation exports. Okay, so moving on, we've got a new function on the mobile application, or several actually, that we'll be calling out in this webinar. The first is the ability to start a report from your last field recommendation or your last field check. So what I mean by that is if I click on this field 49, I can see that it was last checked on March 30th. So in this case, if I want to, I'm now, let's say the next week I'm here checking the field. When I go in to add an observation, what's new is this option over here to use a previous report. So if I click on that, instead of starting from scratch, this will now copy and paste the record from that week into my current report. So I see on that March 30th visit, I had 2 observation pins, but now I can actually enter into those pins digitally and see what was entered. So I had a plant population count, and I had a few other observations in here for weeds and diseases. But then what I can do within here is a couple things. You can add to that. So if I go to pin number 2 where I had the summary, I could add details to that report. I could adjust to say, maybe you do a different population assessment. You can actually reset your entire question to answer it again, but then leave another question to say, perhaps you just redid your plant population assessments, but you want your seed depth to stay and remain on that report. You can do that without having to re-enter that information. A few other things to note with this is that if you do scout at new locations, you can drag these pins around if you want them to be at new locations, or perhaps you went down and you just did a single observation on this recent check. What you can do is go over to this observation tab, and then you can actually slide the observations to the left if you want to delete an entire observation, and then you can see we're just left with 1. So you can copy and paste, but still have the flexibility of moving pins and deleting entire observations, or adding entirely new observations. So if you now found something new in the southwest corner, you could now do that, drop that pin in that corner, and perhaps you found you want to do a different growth stage observation there. So that is the ability to start from a previous week's report, but now when I submit that, it will include all the information that was captured in the previous week that wasn't edited in the current view. So hopefully that's a time-saving function. The other thing that people are looking to use that for would be if you did something like a stand count or a seed depth check, and you simply want that to appear on every report or PDF that goes to a producer or a grower. You can copy and paste from last week just simply for the purpose of making sure that data is always on the PDF. Okay, moving on, we also have a feature where we can have more flexibility in what gets entered on the mobile application. So what I mean by that is if I zoom in to this field 39 and I click on this field, what's new is that under this ... menu within the app, we now have a new pane down here. Now, last season, if you edit a boundary or you're a scout going out to the field for the first time in the year, and you found that the boundary was split, or you thought it was going to be corn and now it was soybeans, you could only make those adjustments from the web view. Now we've added the ability for you to do this to make both of those changes, but in the field in real time. So what we'll do here is we'll click Edit Field Shape. So now from the app, what I can do is I can click on that boundary and I see the vertices display. The vertices displayed. So let's say you can see here that there is a clear split east-west. And so what I can do here is I can just click on this vertice and I can drag it over on the mobile application. And then now if I save this, this will be a change made to that boundary. So if I accept those changes, now you can see that the field is split in real time, and you can see how that would be viewed, and then you could immediately turn around and scout that with that updated boundary. So that is how that would work. And the other thing to note with this is, like we said, right now this is assigned to corn, but perhaps you've gone out there and you see that, no, this is indeed soybeans. You can click the change crop option. And what you'd see here is that you get a drop-down list for, first of all, your crop pick list, but then also the associated variety drop-down as well for those. And in my case, I didn't have any variety. So let me go into a better example here. So we'll go into this field and say it was, a different crop. You could select from there, but then you would also get that variety drop down is a better example here. So you'd have the flexibility to make those changes on the app. In addition, a use case here would be if you know a field is going to be planted into corn, or let's just say sugar beets, for example, but you don't know what variety. You could simply assign a crop and leave the variety blank in your planting phase. But then when you go out to the field, or the grower wants to enter in what they planted while they're planting it, they could then just update the variety or add a variety without having to do that from the web view. So those are two different use cases, but we're allowing the users to have that flexibility to do it from the phone, from the field, is the key thing. So those are two new adjustments that are visible and available on the app. And then the other options are the same that were previously in the app, just in a different layout, where you can set a field entrance, or you can put plant harvest dates, and that is all in that drop-down menu of the ... Okay, moving on, we also have the ability, as I mentioned in the slides, to drive field boundaries to capture precise acreage amounts and to delineate those boundaries based on, let's just say, walking, driving a boundary. So to simulate this, I do have a video that was captured. And so what this is if we jump in on the mobile app, just to show you the location here. So if we click on this ... and I'll go to a different scenario. You can edit boundaries this way, or you can create new fields. And the scenario I'll talk through is creating a new field. So the blue plus button, click a new field, and now the new option that's available in FarmQA is the icon of this vehicle. So if you click on that, that will enter you into a mode where you can record and capture a boundary based on your GPS location. So within this mode, the way this works is this is driving a parking lot at a somewhat faster speed, but you click the drive button, click record, and now you can see your GPS would be shown on the screen. You can connect your device to an external GPS if high precision is important to you. And then as you drive this boundary, as you can see, we will be delineating the shape that you're driving. And in addition to that, once that shape closes, we'll show you the exact acreage as well. So that would be your experience when you're in the field. A few things to note is that you can also, let's say if I pause this, in your screen, on your screen, you have a record and a pause button. But one thing you can do with that is that, let's say you're right where this green circle is now. You could click pause, knowing that you need to draw a perfectly straight line over to the southeast corner. You could click pause and then resume when you're physically in the southeast corner. And then we would snap a line between your previous GPS location and your current. That way, like I said, you're snapping a perfect line. So this function is a new addition. And what you can do with that is, like I said, you drive the boundary, but then once that is done, and let's say, in my case, I'm just gonna simulate a similar scenario of if we just drove a boundary. So let me go into adding this field here. So let's say I will be drawing this, but let's assume we drove this boundary instead of actually just drawing it. You would then be left in a mode where you could still edit the boundary. So let's say you just drove it, and maybe your GPS fluctuated in one spot and you needed to make a correction. You could then grab vertices to adjust the pins. You could add new vertices by grabbing in the middle, and then that allows you to continue to grab and provide more detail into a shape. But with that, you could then add a field, and that would take into account, you could put the details in here, but it would be based on your GPS. So that is a combination of driving plus adjusting vertices or deleting vertices. And you would delete vertices by clicking on one, meaning that it's highlighted in white, and then the eraser in the top right would actually remove that altogether. So those are a few new options as far as the editing boundaries. And one thing that I did mention would be the acreage. And so as you drove that boundary, you would see the acreage right where my mouse is now, and that would be to 2 decimal places of accuracy based on your driven boundary. So a use case here, or a secondary use case I should say, is that if you want to drive a drowned out area, a replant, maybe you're going to spot spray an area, you can use this tool simply as a measurement tool to be capturing the exact acreage based on walking, driving, etc. So that is a new function that's available to everybody that's on the call here. And if you have questions, there's this question mark icon that would answer how you go about driving and using that function. All right, what we'll talk about next is we have the ability to import soil data, but we added a few new functions to that since our last quarterly update. So if this is brand new to you, I would recommend watching that January 11th webinar, but I will be showing simply 2 new functions that came along with our latest update. And the big piece to this is our ability to associate soil data back to georeferenced pins. And so before, you would upload data and it would automatically tag to the centroid of the field. But what we've made an improvement to is if you do have, let's say it's grids or composite points, you can upload those points or define them, and then the data can associate back to those locations. So to do that, we have in the slide out pane, so if I back out one step here, you can slide out the map details, and then within here, you can see soil sample locations is a new option. And if I turn this on right now, you can see there's nothing displayed on my map. But what I can do is if I click this pencil icon, it gets me into a mode where I can upload. So this would be a scenario where if you have existing data or pins, you can upload that data set into FarmQA. And so what I'll do here is if I bring back over my Mac window, you can see I've got a pin example, and I'll just drop this in, and this happens to be a shapefile, but you can see it delineates those pins on top of the field. Now on the left-hand pane, what you'd want to do is choose the attribute that's going to link up to your soil import, meaning that when we drop in a CSV file with the actual lab results, we're going to be looking for a sample ID in this case, which then associates the data back to those GPS specific pins. So now if I upload, those are now soil sampling pins in the system. And as you can see here, if I click on them, there's no data currently. But so this can be done where if you drop a pin, then you take your mobile application to the field and you could physically navigate within FarmQA Scouting to those points. And then once the data is received from a lab, we'll talk through the process of uploading the data and associating it back to those pins. So I've got a secondary account where I'll be doing the upload in. And if I jump over here, you will see the same field with the same pins without data in it. But in this case, I will actually upload a CSV file containing data back to those pins. So as far as the file itself, if I open this up, you can see I have columns built out for, in my case, it's the organization, grower, field, and the key here being sample ID. So that will associate back and associate each one of these lines to the appropriate pins on the map. So if I jump into my soil tab and import, I've already created a soil import profile for this pin example. And if you want to see details on how to set up a profile, that would be called out in the January webinar. But for now, I will simply upload a new file for the associating back to the pins. So in this case, it's that CSV that I just showed. But what I'll do in this case is I will just drag and drop that into our upload window, and that will be associating the data to the pins. And so you can see that this is the session I just uploaded, so you can see it succeeded. And now if I return to the map, we will be able to turn on those pins, the sampling pins. And what I will do here is if I click on a pin, we should see the results. So there we go. So before, as you notice, that those were blank when I clicked on them, but now the data that I just uploaded in that CSV is associated to each pin or location. So that is a new function, is associating the data back to those pins. And if I click on the boundary, just as a reminder, this is where you can see an average across the field versus the pin specific data in the map view. The other thing that has been added on the same front is that within analytics, if we want to view that soil data, and we'll do that within our report tab, what's new is that if you can see the field name I had for this example was soil, and these are the averaged values that we uploaded for each of the nutrients we see in the columns. But a new addition here is that you can expand this out, and then you can see individual data by pin shown as a drop-down list. So this is a new function where you can expand this out if you do want to see pin-specific data within analytics. Okay, another feature to talk through here is we did add the ability to view secondary labels. So this one is a somewhat seemingly small addition, but it has been very valuable to our customers. So what this is within settings, the organization tab, and then you can see here it says enabled detailed specific labels on map when zoomed in. So just like it describes, as we view these fields, either from the web view or the scouting app, we will start out by just seeing the field name. But as I zoom in, we now get a secondary label displaying below, which shows the crop dash the variety name. And so that would allow you to see what's planted there without actually clicking on it. And then the value of that becoming on the mobile application, the same view exists there where you get the secondary labels appearing along with your GPS. So if you're driving down a highway, you can lock the GPS to your location and then simply be seeing what's planted in the fields surrounding you. Another thing from the map view that may have been called out, but if not, I wanted to make sure that it was, we can export maps. And so what this would be, if you want to zoom in, one of those secondary labels are displayed, or maybe you just want to show your sugar beet fields, for example. I just called them beets. Let's see. There you go. My beet fields. You can now filter down, zoom in to where those secondary labels are displayed, and then print that map by selecting your resolution. And then this will export out a high resolution PNG of what's currently being displayed on the map view. So this would be a use case if you're looking to print out maps for your producers or for a spray applicator. You could print this out, text it, email it, and say these are the 3 fields that need to get sprayed, for example. So those are new additions in the program from the map view. The other thing to note is that as we display the map view pane here as well, we've got the ability to view weather stations. And this is not a new function in itself, but what is new is a new station type. And so as you can see here, as I turn on weather stations, you can see I've got my stations to display. I can click on that and see the details as far as a summary. Clicking on the header would bring me into the detailed view of this station where I could see hour by hour results and then broken down by what's being captured. Now, what is new here is that if I come into settings and sensors, we have a new station type called virtual weather stations. And the value of doing this is if I add a new station, you'd be able to add a virtual station here. Let me turn this on. So this will be available shortly, but currently it's under a beta flag, as you can see in the URL. But this would allow me to define or set up a virtual station, and that will then function to allow you to track GDUs and season precip total down to a field level. And so if I come back in here and now I see a third option, which is virtual station, I'll click on that, give it a name, and I'll just call this central. Now from the map view, you can click to define where that station should be deployed. So I clicked, and then I can validate. And then what that will do is it will create a new station within my FarmQA account. And now the value of doing this, opposed to just the field specific data, would be once I display my stations, I can associate weather stations to specific fields. And so these would be the stations I have in my account. But now if I want to, let's say, associate the surrounding stations, or sorry, fields to pull data from that station, I can do that by clicking on the station itself, assign station to fields, and then I can start to click around that to start pulling the weather data from that station to associate to the fields. So the value here is twofold, is if you have existing physical stations like Davis or Pessel, that data can now flow in and contribute to the field level detail that you see on scouting reports and be used to track GDUs across the season. So again, that's the association process. If I click the sign, it would start to use that station's data. But then the visualization is if I jump over to, let's just go to my Munson Farms account. I can now be seeing within, actually, I'll do it over here. Within 2022, I can click on a field, and now you can see I've got metrics for GDUs. And so what that means is right now, I don't have a good data set for showing a year's worth of data, but you'll be able to compare field by field the trends over time of the GDU data, along with the precipitation total and when you got certain events. So you can see that trending out here. And then at the bottom, we would always show you the total for GDUs, the season total down here. So that is coming from those virtual stations or physically deployed stations. But then within analytics as well, this is where we're going to have, we have two new columns where you can see the weather conditions would be in here for weather, and GDUs and precip would be available. So you could filter your data down to say, show me any fields with GDU data. And then you could say any fields that has greater or less than certain GDUs. And you could say, show me any sugar beet fields that have, greater than 100 GDUs. That might tell you they would be susceptible to water hemp infestations. So that is new, along with the searching of the precip totals as well by fields. And keep in mind that you can generate a report based on that. So if you wanted to just have let's say an Excel sheet with just those values, you can then pull out all these other attributes and then export to Excel, and you'd have a field by field report. Let me just freeze this. So now you can see by field which fields have certain GDU values. So that's the concept of virtual stations, and the value of doing that is capturing the yearly and precipitation GDU values. So for now, I know that was a lot to cover. I think we're going to leave the webinar at that and leave some time for some questions in our last few minutes. And hopefully we've got questions coming through as I can address those. But if not, please tune in to future webinars. And so as you can see, I pulled back up my PowerPoint. We do have an upcoming webinar where this one will be focused more so on the grower portal side of things. So if you are an ag consulting firm, you can set up growers with access to FarmQA. And this webinar will be talking through the value of doing that and what the grower will be able to see and do when they have been given a login to the program. And then after that, we're going to be doing a webinar going into May, where we talk about the different reporting options from the PDF side of things. So we do have a lot of different levers and dials that you can turn to get different views, and I will be talking to the options that we have available for that. And as always, we've got the webinars available on our website and our YouTube channel, and you can submit topic suggestions to info@farmqa.com.